Hey everybody, welcome back to Miles and Mentors. Today we have an excellent mentor with us, Charles Gracey from Cents Per Mile podcast and Hot Seat Services. We're going to walk through his journey in the industry, hear his take and his advice to you. So stick with us. We have an excellent episode lined up for you right after this on Miles and Mentors.
Welcome to Miles and Mentors, the podcast that humanizes trucking. Getting real-life advice and insights from logistics professionals from all over the industry. We sit down with those seasoned mentors who have put in the miles with a mission to pass on the knowledge gained from years in the industry to you. Now buckle up and enjoy the show.
Hey, Charles, thank you so much for being on with us, man.
Hey, I was happy to be here. Exciting stuff going on out in the trucking industry, and this is one of them.
Most definitely. Well, I've been a big fan of all the content that you put out. So it's an honor for me to be able to have you on the same screen. And I'm excited to dive in and hear your story and your take behind everything as well.
Said nobody ever.
Well, let's dive in. And I first kind of want to know what brought you to this industry in the first thing. Like what really brought you around trucking?
Oh, I feel like this is where I can, have my own version of a superhero origin story, but mine's not that interesting. I was born into this. My entire family's been in trucking. As much as I said I didn't want to do it because I saw the toll it took on my dad and the time he had with the family, here I am. So, I remember going to work on Saturdays with my dad, and I had all kinds of colorful things to say about that experience at that age, but it's benefited me. But I remember being 12 years old and learning how to drive a semi with a guy named John Boomsma sitting next to me. He's like, "Listen, Charlie, if you grind a gear, you get a Charlie horse. If you miss a gear, you get a Charlie horse. You're either going to learn to drive or your leg's going to go numb."
That's a lot different from the training today.
Yeah. Yeah, ain't lying there.
But man, that's awesome though. So, as we're talking about, mentorship on this show, wanted to enter that space or not, like growing up with that type of influence, that really paints a whole different picture and gives you a whole different level of experience going into this.
Yeah, from the time I was a kid growing up in the trucking, I remember back when you had those big old computer setups, no laptops. My dad had one at home, black screen with green writing all over it all the time. And I remember the first cell phone the company gave him. It looked like something you can mug someone with on a corner. I saw trucking progress to where it is now, where I sit, and I've been in it my entire life. I've been the driver. I've worked every position except brokerage, and I'm okay with that because it looks like they're having so much fun over there right now. I just want to let them have it all to themselves. But it has allowed me to have different perspectives, which has aided me in servicing our clients and our listeners.
Fantastic. So we talked about you not really having the foresight for coming into this industry, but growing up with that unique perspective. Where do those two paths cross that you leap in and actually join into the industry itself?
Like all good stories, this is not one of them. No, I got out of the military and I didn't know what I was going to do because I planned on being a lifer in there. And then I got injured and I got out and I had to do what a lot of veterans have to do and figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do that very well. I got out and I maybe I want to do this. Maybe all I knew is I wanted to be in the military like my dad. And I fell into culinary. Little known fact is my first degree was in culinary arts, and then hospitality management. And I worked for a celebrity chef in Chicago, and it was fun, but you don't make very much money doing that stuff. It was a paycheck to paycheck, and I had a family, so I fell into what I knew, trucking. I went out, got my CDL, used the veteran benefits that Illinois had offered at that time, got my CDL paid for, was top of my class, and I knew trucking. I knew how to drive, so it was just a formality. Got into a truck and did that for several years, and I became a trainer, helped them design training programs, and someone just plucked me from the truck one day and said, "Hey, you're coming in the office." And I'm like, "What did I do wrong?" And they're like, "We want to offer you a promotion." I'm like, "All right, I'm interested." So I started off building out driver training programs. I was a trainer. I had 0 accidents, 0 tickets. I didn't even know what a ticket looked like in a CDL vehicle. I was in a commercial motor vehicle and I didn't have a fender bender or anything. So I was the ideal candidate that checked the box. Hey, you're going to design training programs. And doing that in Chicago is impressive because not many people can say I escaped Chicago without a ticket or an accident or both. But I did. So I did that for a while and I was having fun with it, but I just kind of didn't feel that fulfillment that I always envisioned. You know, the movies teach you like, yo, you should feel like this about a job. I just didn't feel that.
Yeah.
But recruiting kind of piqued my interest. So at the time, and this company still do it, they had those referral bonuses. I decided to make a play for that. So I put out my own job posting on Craigslist at the time with a referral link, and they found out I did it, and I got my hand slapped. They're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, there's no rule that says I can't write an ad. And look how many drivers we hired. They're like, you need to turn over the rights to that ad to our recruiting department.
Oh, wow.
But I enjoyed that whole little experience. And I found out that drivers really related well to somebody that had sat in that seat, someone that can talk the language. Many recruiters can't. And that's the first human element of the process. Before a driver ever gets to talk to the company, they're talking to that recruiter.
Yeah.
So I found this ad on Craigslist looking for a recruiter in Chicago for Eastern European company. You know, all jokes aside, it was strictly commission. So I looked at my wife and I'm like, I want to do this. She's like, you're going to trade in $60K for sure a year for commission only. I'm like, yeah, I'm betting on me. So I went over there and they turned me down. They offered me a driving job. I went through their orientation and I got put in this little closet. And, you know, all the horror stories you hear about orientation, this was definitely one of them. If there was going to be an origin story for Charles, this is the defining moment. I walk into this place, they put me in this mop closet that they called an orientation room, and it locked from the outside. I sat there for an hour and a half with nobody walking in to greet me or anything. And finally, I'm banging on the door, and someone comes out, and a nice lady. We're friends now to this day, but she helps get the orientation going. Then I get my truck, and I was promised a new truck because of my records. Well, you know, you've heard these stories before from drivers. And they bring out a truck, and the mirrors were electrically taped to the brackets. And I'm like, this is not new. And they're like, it's new to you, word for word. The stuff bad trucking commercials are made of. And I walked out. About 2 months later, I'm working another driving job, and I see the ad again. So I respond, and I shared my experience with them as a driver, and they hired me. So I was a commission-based recruiter for the same carrier that just did all that junk to me. Within a year, I moved up to recruiting manager, then recruiting director. And the first thing I did when I got that position was I took that orientation room and I made it my office. That way it could never be used as an orientation room for drivers again. It was like, nope, this cannot happen. And we turned it into a very desirable place for drivers to work. The rapport with the drivers and the image of the company within the driver corps had improved because you had a driver leading that charge, somebody that can relate to these folks, someone that can sit there and talk the talk with them, but also connect the dots between operations, safety, and recruiting to the driver corps to make sure that people understood not just this is the way it is, but this is why it's this way.
I love that. You know, everything you said, you've got such a well-rounded experience in the industry. The biggest leap I see, though, is you coming out of a culinary job to on the road and dealing with those warmer foods.
Yeah, you know what, though? It was the best transition. And I wouldn't have known it at the time, but, you know, I work in recruiting and marketing and consulting now. So I see people from all walks of life, and some of the best recruiters outside of drivers. If we're removing former drivers and people that have been in trucking from, you know, what we're pulling from, is people that have been in the hospitality industry. I think trucking lacks the ability to realize that it's still a level of service, customer service, and who are the customers in different regards along the way. And drivers are a customer. For Hot Seat, it's the drivers, it's the carriers, and it's my recruiters, my team. Those are all customers in my eyes, and I treat them with the level of service that they deserve. And that starts with respecting the process.
That's fantastic. I love that approach. I think that is definitely in trucking, but I think in almost every industry out there, that approach is totally overlooked. Having somebody that has been in that position and able to directly relate, we so often just see, get this person in there, push this narrative. It is what it is, get over it. And that doesn't work very well at the end of the day.
Well, you think about it, you go to a hotel or a restaurant, you're paying money to get a premium service.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't people feel the same if you're entrusting them with your employment, if you're trying to become part of that team, if you're trying to procure a client? It should have that same level of service. And that's where I see the successful transition from people that have been hospitality or service-based organizations into trucking, because they bring that level of service. And as long as you don't ruin it for them or jade them away from it, you can embrace that, and it makes a more holistic approach, and we generally see it be more successful.
I fully agree. I think that's a fantastic insight, and really one of the best approaches you can take, especially in this industry. And obviously it's been doing very well for you.
I mean, perception's reality. It has served me well, and I'm grateful, not only for the experiences that I've picked up over the years, but for the people that I've met along the way. I tell people all the time, relationships, that's more valuable than any dollar, in my opinion, because dollars come and go. Relationships, those stay, and those have really driven me to where I'm at. When I started the show, a lot of those initial people that tuned in were relationships, people that had supported my journey. Now we have this vast audience, and they have so many different things they can choose to watch or listen to, or who to pay as a consultant, depending on which avenue you want to go down. They choose to come down this one. And I think, again, that hospitality, that service-based mentality of being grateful for those people, it's something often lost when I walk into organizations or talk to individuals that just don't have that same appreciation for it.
Couldn't agree with you more, man. And, that's honestly a major part of why this show got started as well. I've had my experience in podcasting, but being able to work in the logistics and trucking industry and being able to meet, so many drivers that are from all around and just so many amazing people, having those conversations, you learn so much, sticks with you, and you take away from that. And like you said, building those connections, that's stuff that lasts a lifetime, and really what brought us here today. So within that, as we see this industry kind of continue to evolve and grow and have new generations, we want to get your lived and learned take to kind of pass on to that new generation, to give them a leg up in the industry. You've been through a lot and you've learned a lot the hard way, and you've had a lot of legs up, like growing up with the family experience that a lot of people don't have. Kind of taking that into mind, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges for someone getting started in the trucking industry today?
They don't listen. I know it seems simple, but it's the best advice. We'll go back a minute here. And one of the first things my dad taught me when I got into trucking was complacency kills. The moment someone thinks they know everything is the moment that they become a liability. And that holds very true from a driver's perspective, because you're out there with the motor in public. But it also holds true when you're inside the office or in anything you do, in my opinion. Don't be scared to listen. You don't have to agree with everything that you hear.
Yeah.
But does it actually hurt to take the time out to listen to it?
That's a hot take. I like it. So with industry trends, what do you think are some of the industry trends that new drivers should be keeping an eye on?
They should be realizing that they have to be their own advocate. No one's going to look out for you, no matter what they say, as well as you're going to look out for yourself. So do your research with your partners, with your employers, even what you're hearing from fellow drivers. Vet it out yourself. Don't necessarily take everything as it's written in stone.
Yeah.
Do your research, be your own advocate, and don't be scared to have conversations. One of the biggest things that we're seeing from a recruiting perspective, as an example, is drivers just no-show orientation. They think that the power index is still in their favor. This is not a employee's market. If you're in a job search, you're already at a disadvantage. There's a lot of people out there looking for jobs.
Yeah.
Whether you're a driver or office staff, it doesn't matter right now. Put your best foot forward. And if something else comes along or you're not quite sure, don't be scared to say, no, I need to evaluate this, or I need time to think about this. Nobody's got a proverbial gun to your head. Be your own person and have those conversations. And if you're not ready to take the jump, tell them, because you never know when you're going to need to cross that bridge again down the line. And the last thing you want to do is burn a bridge.
Yeah. So the trucking industry is one where right out of the gate, you have a lot of options set before you. There's the option to, go be a company driver and take on the experience that way, or go where the big bucks are and do it all yourself and be an owner operator. And while there is more money, there's more responsibility on your shoulders. From your perspective and experience, what would you say would be the best route for somebody entering the industry?
Yeah, so there's no cookie cutter mold to this. Just like many things in trucking, there's no cookie cutter application to many things. But in my experience, with talking to so many different individuals from different walks of life, I think a lot of times people get hung up on that instant gratification. Like, I got my CDL, I'm going to get rich quick. Nothing good is easy, and nothing easy is good. And that's the simplest way to put it. Trucking is one of the few industries where, in my opinion, you actually have to earn your dues still. So get out there and get your experience. And carriers who might be listening to this aren't going to love this, but it's best to learn in someone else's equipment. So when you own your own, you're not making the mistakes in theirs. That's part of the cost of doing business. When you're a carrier, is you anticipate people are going to make mistakes. And hopefully you got people that'll coach you to avoid those, or how to avoid having reoccurring ones. But you want to go out there and get your experience. You want to get a firm understanding of the industry, and then venture into owning your own truck, because there's a learning curve there. And if you want to have that learning curve and equipment you own, I hope you got a nice padded bank account, because it's gonna be a bumpy ride in most cases.
No doubt, no doubt. And that's a great point about the equipment, because that is such a quick way to get turned upside down in this industry and get yourself forced out before you get in the first place. But kind of like what you were saying too, I've always had the take there that it's good to get in where you can get that mentorship, and a lot of times that is being a company driver, where you can kind of get a feel for it. Because while yes, there is more money kind of owning your business, if you don't know how to properly account for that and run that business, that money is going to disappear a lot faster than it comes.
Well, absolutely. And think of how much more success you're going to find if you understand the ins and outs of the business.
Yeah.
Before going to become your own business. No one came out the womb an expert in what they do. And anyone that says they are, I'd love to challenge them to a debate on that, because we all had learning curves. We all had landmines that we stepped on that develops into who we are today. That goes same for being a business owner or a fleet owner or an owner operator. There's a progression. There's layers to this. And if you learn those layers, you're going to have a much more successful trip along the way, and you're going to be able to have more fond memories of the experience rather than be jaded to the entire industry. The industry ate me up and spit me out. Well, I mean, I'm sure you kind of played a role in there somewhere.
Fair enough. So getting into this industry, no matter which route you take, it's obviously not your 9 to 5 regular job, right? Like it takes special dedication. It takes a special person. And even for those people, it takes some getting used to. So what would you say are some essential skills or habits that a new driver needs to really be honing in on?
Honestly, roll with the punches. Again, there's no cookie cutter mold or map to this. It's going to be different for each person in it. I can speak to my experience particularly. I don't know what 9 to 5 ever looked like. I'm an executive now, and I still don't do that. Anyone that knows me knows midnight, you can call Charles, he'll answer. 4 a.m., you can call Charles and he'll answer. Luckily, I'm blessed with a really nice wife that understands I'm just broken in that regard. But yeah, you're going to put in your time. You're going to roll up your sleeves and you're going to put some sweat equity into this. But again, I defer back to trucking is one of the few industries where you get what you put into it. If you want to become a business owner, you can. If you want to work for someone and have that kind of safety, you can. With making more money, there's more risk. And that's why it pays more money. So those owner operators, yeah, they're making the big bucks, but they also carry big risk. And you also only hear about the big checks, but no one goes out there and, shouts from the rooftops, they're big failures.
Yeah.
You want to look for a mentor or someone that can help you. Find those people that are going to sit there and have conversations about those failures. Because if you can learn from theirs, then you're not doomed to repeat the same mistake.
Oh, no doubt, man. No doubt. Those big checks come in, but if you're not accounting and getting ready for what's to always come, that's a failure waiting to happen. Because I
Think
swear,
of how many big checks go out.
that's exactly what I'm thinking. I mean, the trucking industry, like the repair fees are much bigger than you would imagine. Just putting fuel in your truck to get down the road is a massive expense that you constantly have to look out for. But then everything in between, just keeping that truck running, because if you don't, you're costing yourself even more money.
Yeah, well, and it's absolutely right. I went earlier and I said that people should always be learning and listening.
Yeah.
So when I started my business, I traded in $150K a year salary to work out of my garage. That was the second time my wife looked at me like I was nuts. And that's how Hot Seat got founded. And one of the first pieces of advice, it was within the first week of me launching the company. One of my mentors had looked over to me and like, what's your exit strategy? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm barely in the door. What do you mean exit? And they went through the method of that thought process. And when you think about it as a business, if you always from day one structure your business as if you have an exit strategy, your business is structured in a way where things are laid out in a way where someone coming in that might want to acquire it, someone coming in that might want to partner with you, things are laid out in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're going by the seat of your pants and just piecing it together, which a lot of people do, and it can work, if those opportunities come, you now have to go back in time and rewrite the entire board to make it in a way that's palatable for the person that's looking outward in. So I had the fortunate situation where someone had dropped that guidance on me. And I did. I structured my business in a way that was always ready to go to market for depending on whichever situation arose.
Yeah.
Because of that, on my 2-year anniversary, which was timing, you couldn't recreate it if you tried. Exactly on our 2-year anniversary as Hot Seat, we were acquired.
Really?
So the exact same day I started the company, 2 years later, I sold the company. And we sold to a company called Cub Ventures. They're the parent company of CDL Life.
Okay.
So when we did that, that was just manifestation of those mentors, of those advices that people had dropped along the way on my path to where I'm at now. And the relationships all manifesting into that moment where I chose to listen to the advice that could be applied. I chose to leave behind what couldn't be, but I always listened. And here we are today having this conversation, which if you would have talked to me 6 years ago, I've been like, no one's going to know my name. Now you can't get past a Google search without finding me. I wish I saw less of me.
That's a really great kind of way to look at things, right? Because I don't think the general public has any inkling of what the trucking industry deals with in that regard, because it is really like no other business out there, especially for, the small owner operator. Any other business, you've got an office or your garage or whatever dedicated space and hours, and a trucker is on the road, and you can't just turn over and send that email while you're driving. Like it is really hard to fit all that in, because you have to literally drive across the country, but then also make sure that you're staying on top of your taxes and your bills and your finances and making sure you have a load coming up. And there's so many moving wheels.
And there's more than even that.
Oh, yeah.
You still have why do we all go to work? Yes, to make money, but to support our lifestyle, our families, our significant others, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't go away just because you clocked in and you're on your hours of service and you're driving down the road. You could be hundreds of miles away and that stuff's still going in the background. And there's no worse feeling than being in that box
Yeah.
and a problem happening back home, because guess what? You're in that box alone. You're secluded by yourself, no one to bounce stuff off of, no one to vent to. So you just get windshield time and every scenario is playing out in your head.
Yeah.
So it's mentally and physically exhausting in that job. And the best thing you could do is balance yourself, center yourself to prioritize and almost triage each situation. Hey, I need my head on the money right now, or this repair, or hey, I need to do this in order to go there. Like I had to learn that myself. And a lot of what I learned behind that windshield is applied to my daily life here behind the desk now. And it still benefits me greatly to look at things in that regard as, hey, all right, I'm triaging this.
Sure.
In order to get here, I still have to address these. So let's take care of these.
But, also to the point that you made there, to view it as a business and not just, I don't even know the words to put it in, because everyone's going to view it as a business, but a lot of people in that owner operator space are like that entrepreneur sole prop deal. And when you treat it as such, you're paycheck to paycheck. If you're looking at it, like you said, and treating it as a business and looking at that greater business plan and looking at those exit strategies, I think you're going to go about your, how you treat that business and how you, keep up with it and handle it in a totally different manner.
Absolutely.
Kind of separating it from yourself.
Well, and you should. This is your livelihood.
Yeah.
Again, you got to advocate for yourself. If you're doing this, if you're an owner operator, hopefully you're looking at this before you even bought that first truck. Am I only trying to have this truck and make my paycheck? Am I trying to have a fleet and eventually not be driving the truck? Am I trying to grow my own empire? Whatever your goal is, sit down, and that goal is going to change. That's the beautiful thing about this plan. It's going to change several times if you're doing it right.
For sure.
Because you're going to learn. And you look at that business model. You look at your partner strategically. You look at your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. And if you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because this industry has so many things to offer.
Yeah.
You guys see it in what you do. You've seen those great successes, you've seen those great failures, and you have all of this information where if I was somebody and I had a company like that in my corner, I'd be like, hey, what do you see in this scenario? I might not use your advice, but at least now I have one more option that I might not have known about.
100%. So as we're talking about that and those learning experiences and taking that all in, how important would you say that mentorship is for someone coming into the trucking industry and maintaining throughout the trucking industry?
Oh, it's critical. It's critical. So where I'm at, it's because I had mentors, and in certain scenarios, some of those mentors now view me as a mentor, which is crazy. It's surreal at times. But I think back outside of me, when I was a driver, I remember coming and working alongside a good friend of mine, and in the mornings on certain days, he'd have his son there. And he was teaching his son about pre-trip and about this and about that, kind of like how I came into the business. And then fast forward, I'm now running hot seat. And one of my first clients in the first year was this kid who now had a CDL, bought his first truck. He reached out to me. He remembered me. He saw me online. He's like, hey, I know this guy. Dropped his dad's name. And I'm like, wow, you're no longer a kid anymore. We get to talking. Fast forward again, he's got 3 trucks. Fast forward again, he's got 10. This individual is now up to 20 trucks. He is living his own dream. And he tapped on my shoulder for some mentorship.
Love it.
And I get that makes sense, because I wasn't the best listener for my dad, and my son doesn't listen to me. So probably reaching outside a family tree might, offer some benefits. But I felt privileged that I was able to give back to this individual, and that there was a history there. And I kind of treat that with anyone that reaches out. If you want advice, even if we're not doing business, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to vent, I'm here for it. I might not be here at a drop of a dime, but I will make time in a very reasonable time frame, because it is important. And that's how we get people excited into the industry and see success.
That's solid, man. I appreciate you for that. That's, I mean, the amount of help that a guy like you being willing to inject that into the industry is really what makes all the difference. It really is.
Made a difference to me. So it helps to have a network to pull from. And some people weren't born into this. I don't, look past the fact that I had a lot of fortunate events and people I could tap on, but being accessible to those people that are new in the industry, being accessible to those people looking for advice, it costs a little bit of time, but it makes a whole world of difference.
All right. Two-parter for you. One, what is some advice that you wish you would have had jumping into this industry? And then the other side of it is, what keeps you so motivated to keep helping and supporting drivers in the industry today?
Advice that I wish I had. We use this term work-life balance. And when you're bootstrapping, it's really hard to do. If you care about what you do, and you go back to those previous topics and conversations we were having, you get sucked up into it. Well, like for someone like myself, I have a passion. I really love what I do. So at times I forget that there's a life outside of it, because that is my life. My identity and everything is tied up into this because I've grown up in this business. So when you take the trucking out of Charles, I'm just like my dad. And that's the best way to describe it. I'm just like my dad. I live and breathe and everything in this. So when you take that away, it can get a little overwhelming. Take time to enjoy the things outside, because I had a cardiac event at 36, repeating my dad's very same mistakes.
Oh, wow.
I was just loving what I did so much. And I had one. And how much can I help my family or my friends or my colleagues if I'm not taking care of myself? So take time to take care of yourself, both physically, mentally. You'll service yourself, your goals, and everyone around you a whole lot better.
That's fantastic advice, man. It really is. So we have talked about a lot today, and you're one of those guys we could sit down with for 4 hours and dive through this. But we really, really appreciate everything that you've brought to the table. Anything else that comes to mind that you think a new driver should know entering this industry?
Yeah, you should know different avenues and resources you have at your disposal. I can't tell you how many times people are like, "Oh, you can't find drivers on LinkedIn." You should find drivers on LinkedIn. You should want to know how the sausage is made, even if you don't plan on being a recruiter or a broker or factoring company. Ask questions to these people. They have lessons that they've learned, and that people that worked with them have learned, that they are more than willing to share. Ask for those resources, ask for directions. We often, pride ourselves in, we don't need instructions. Everyone needs a little bit of help. Ask for some instructions, choose which ones you want to use, but know that they're there.
That's fantastic advice, man. Well, for those that want to get a hold of you and find out more, I want you to give us some shameless plugs here. Tell us about Hot Seat Services and Cents Per Mile. How can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so Hot Seat Services, you can go to hotseatservices.com. You can email info@hotseatservices.com, on all major social medias. For myself, Charles Gracey, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Cents Per Mile every Wednesday at 11:30 Eastern, Freight Waves. Also on Reach Across America Radio on Trucking Tuesdays at 7, and in rotation on Sirius XM now.
Fantastic. Dude, thank you so much for coming on and just giving us a little bit of your day today and letting us dig into your experience and your expertise in the industry. I want to thank you seriously for everything you do in the industry. You're a huge asset, and hopefully we'll have you back on here another time one day in the future.
No, hey, I appreciate it. And can you send me the sound clip of me being an asset? I want to send it to my mom.
We'll do. We got you. Well, thanks.
Appreciate you, my guy.
We'll see you soon. Take care.